Good afternoon. Today we're going to talk about establishing a prosthetist orthotist profession, the case of Ukraine. The presentation starts with the history of prosthetics and orthotics in Ukraine before and after the Russian invasion. At the symposium, it is going to be delivered by John Badsdorf, CPO. John is a prosthetist orthotist, founder and director of Prosthetica. He's also the co-founder of Protest Hub, and he serves on the board of directors of ISPO. Once upon a time, there was no formal prosthetics and orthotics education in Ukraine of any kind. All education or training was done through apprenticeship up until 2001. In 1991 to 2014, before the Russian invasion, all formal trainings that were done at that time were in Russia. All of the P&O training in Ukraine was on-the-job or apprenticeship training. Prosthetists seeking more advanced training could get it through foreign schools or manufacturers, who also sometimes later opened the clinics in Ukraine. Then, between 2001 and 2012, Kharkiv National University of Radio Electronics introduced a university-level P&O specialist program. Most of it was still hands-on through apprenticeship, and there were approximately 65 prosthetists orthotists in Ukraine and many technicians scattered throughout Ukraine. The training was mostly technical. There were no clinical components. The first invasion and war happened in 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea and then later parts of eastern Ukraine. Local P&O facilities took on injured soldiers with amputations and those who needed orthoses, and more complicated patients and all upper limb patients were sent abroad to different countries. There was no one certified to fit upper limb myoelectric prosthesis at the time, and P&O assistance came from many countries, but was all about accepting patients abroad. In 2015, sending patients abroad continued, and it was an unsustainable solution. It was very expensive. No one organized to provide follow-up adjustments, repairs, or replacements, and very rarely a multidisciplinary team approach and minimal therapy was provided to the patient. Here you can see the timeline of the overall efforts between 2001 and 2021 up until the full-scale invasion. Ukraine Prosthetic Assistance Project was implemented by Prosthetica and Protest Hub between 2014 and 2022. It was started by myself, Antonina Kumka, and John Basdorf back in 2014. The first mission took place in Kyiv in 2015. On-site training was done. First multidisciplinary course was introduced. A lot of attention was given to therapy assessment and training, more clinical training of professionals in treating patients. And also there were breakthroughs in terms of technology. For a variety of technology was introduced, and specialists were certified in fitting myoelectric prostheses. Further courses were done in the upcoming years in different cities around Ukraine. Also, Chad Nielsen, who was the CPO from the US, provided partial hand training and stayed in Ukraine to support. In addition to all of the trainings, the team also engaged in advocating successfully for legislative changes in order to ensure systemic progress. The main goals of the project were expertise and knowledge transfer and ensuring localization and sustainability in the country. Following the 2022 full-scale invasion, more online and hands-on training were organized by Protest Hub, Prosthetica, Patients of Ukraine, and OSER in response to the rising number of new amputees. Also, the first educational platform, Baza Znань, or knowledge base, was implemented as part of Protest Hub online website platform, and it was focused and is still is focused on amputee rehabilitation and limb prosthetics. It is free to use, and professionals from all over Ukraine, actually thousands of professionals, have already taken the courses. A little bit of statistics. Regular surveys and industry analysis were conducted by Protest Hub to better understand the impact of Russia's full-scale invasion in Ukraine and act accordingly. And the statistics that you see on the screen is current. So, in summary, it was important to develop local capacity, embrace effective solutions, and respond to desire to learn in Ukraine. It was important to minimize uninformed interventions, testing and trying, and address ethical issues that existed. Overall, the focus was and is on improving lives of people with disabilities through quality care, patient-centered care responsive to patient needs and desires, and also local access to the rehabilitation services. In order to achieve that, we had to establish the standards. We had to know where we're going. Antonina, Kumka, or myself, is a co-founder and chief director of Protest Hub, also an expert in curriculum design and development, as well as blended learning and learning management systems, and the advisor to the Minister of Social Policy of Ukraine. The systemic changes had to be introduced due to the large number of amputees and the growing number of amputees who would require lifelong care, and that care needs to be quality, sustainable. Therefore, the services must be localized, effective, competitive, benefit the patient, and be available all across the country. So we started with developing the National Professional Standard and National Educational Standard. Our goal was to ensure that the system eventually works just the same as it does in all EU countries. National Professional Standard for Prosthetist, Orthotist, based on the ISPO recommendations for the profession name and title, was developed in 2023 and then finally implemented in 2024. The committee was joined by multiple experts and representatives of national government stakeholders, as well as other stakeholders and partners. The following steps were taken in order to develop the standard. ISPO criteria was analyzed. We also looked at different systems that exist in the world in terms of the professional requirements. We developed the standard, a prosthetist, orthotist professional standard framework, and local experts provided their detailed input to ensure that that standard matched more or less what they were already doing, plus adding extra clinical requirements to their expertise. Public consultations were held over 30 days, and everyone had a chance to provide their input to the document. And then standard was adopted by the National Qualifications Agency of Ukraine in November of 2023, and then minor changes were made in 2024. So according to the standard, the prosthetist orthotist profession aims at utilizing evidence-based practice to provide clinical assessment, prescription, technical design, and fabrication of prosthetics and/or orthotics, determining goals and a rehabilitation plan that includes prosthetics, orthotics services, and determining clinical outcomes. This profession aims to ensure that service recipients have equal opportunities to participate fully in the society. So, as a prosthetist orthotist in Ukraine, the professionals would have to be clinical professionals who participate in the development of a patient rehabilitation plan. They would work at a master's level of education. Regulated profession they collaborate with other multidisciplinary team members, and they also stay on top of recent technological advances and developments involved in education and research with enough experience in the field. How it affects the industry. Specialists with lots of experience and appropriate education are recognized and their expertise is appreciated. Higher expectations for quality of care, an opportunity to align industry standards with the rest of the developed world, introduction of appropriate education programs separating clinical and technical professions. Following the professional standard, we moved on to developing a national educational standard, Master of Prosthetics and Orthotics. In March of 2024, Protest Hub assembled an expert committee, again comprised of multiple experts of international and national government stakeholders. So the educational standard highlights are that students are required to take fundamental health sciences courses such as anatomy, pathology, physiology, etc. Clinical practicums must be supervised and run by experienced certified prosthetist orthotists. 1,200 hours of practical training must be completed to graduate, with specific requirements regarding types of socket designs and techniques to be mastered. Research work must incorporate a practical component, including clinical and multidisciplinary considerations. In September of 2024, 4 national medical universities in Ukraine have launched the Master of Prosthetics and Orthotics program. Over 30 students have entered the programs. In November 24, SweCare organized a multidisciplinary Protest Hub delegation to Sweden that consisted of different Ukrainian universities and rehabilitation departments representatives. In May 2025, American Board for Certification in Prosthetics and Orthotics has donated 22 surface tablets to assist with organizing theoretical and clinical exams in Ukraine. A Train the Trainer program, SweCare, supported by the Swedish Institute and organized by Jönköping University, Protest Hub, and Patients of Ukraine, was launched at the beginning of 2025. Prosthetist Orthotist Fast Track pathway was developed for experienced P&O professionals. Anton Johansson, a CPO, a PhD, and an executive board member of ISPO International, is also one of the examiners at the clinical exams conducted as part of the Fast Track program. Fast Track for experienced POs was developed for people who were already in the field practicing and who had at least 3 years of P&O experience and bachelor's degree in a related field, such as biomedical engineering, rehab sciences, and so on. So the 3-month specialization course at Kharkiv National Medical University included practical training with international experts, a special online component of 5 courses developed in partnership with Jönköping University and delivered via Protest Hub online education platform was available to all of them, and participants completed the program by passing independent theoretical and clinical exams. Jönköping University provided an educational support for these professionals A film crew traveled to Sweden to film the lectures, and those lectures were available to professionals in Ukraine, in Ukrainian, in order to help them prepare for the exams. So the first group of 14 professionals was accredited in June 2024, and the second group, comprising of 20 out of 22 registered, was accredited in December 2024. The examiners were international experts Heinz Strabin, John Basdorf, and Anton Johansson. So the important takeaways from this were that P&O workforce in Ukraine is now comprised of 34 certified prosthetist orthotists currently practicing, 3 more expected to begin training in September of 2025. Remaining professionals are classified as technicians. International stakeholders should distinguish between CPOs and technicians in Ukraine. And of course, the future of the prosthetics and orthotics industry of Ukraine, by Olena Kulchitska, advisor to the Minister of Social Policy of Ukraine. The future of P&O industry in Ukraine looks as follows: improvement of the prescribing procedure. It's one of the important parts that the CPOs would be able to participate in and lead the process. Implementation of the practice of multidisciplinary rehabilitation teams, of mandatory assessment tools for prescribing the prostheses that best meets the functional needs of the individual. The development of the prosthetic orthotic technician professional standard, Ministry of Social Policy, and the development of an educational program for training prosthetic orthotic technicians. Digitalization of the process of providing prostheses and orthoses. So, starting January 1st, 2026, the multidisciplinary team members involved in amputee care will be able to provide recommendations and prescriptions for devices through an e-health system that connects both the healthcare system, the Ministry of Health system, and the Ministry of Social Policy system. And improvement of the quality of prosthetic services. There is a need for introduction of legislative requirements for enterprises or for prosthetic centers to have qualified specialists providing prosthetic services, improving the procedure for monitoring the quality of prosthetic services, and creation of a more effective system for quality control of prosthetic services.